Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Crista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today, I am so excited to share our guest, which is Amy Birks, because Amy and we met in another group that we are both a part of. And as each one of us were listening to the other one speak, we thought, wait a minute, that sounds just like me. We do super similar things. We have just kind of like the same vibe. So if you like what I talk about and what I do, you are going to absolutely love Amy as much as I do. So I'm so excited to dive in and chat about all things scaling with her today. So Amy, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Krista. I'm so happy to be here. I do feel like we're activating Wonder Twin powers today, for sure.
Yes, we are. So let me tell you a little bit about Amy, and then we are going to dive in. She is the author of the international bestseller, The Hustle-Free Business, right up my alley. So she quite literally wrote the book on how to make marketing and business development fun, easy, and impactful. She's often referred to as the master connector, and she leverages her 10 years of corporate strategy and project management experience, combined with nearly a decade helping mission-driven brands grow, to make her the purposeful founder's secret weapon for scaling without sacrifice. And today we are going to be talking all about scaling without sacrifice, because I think, as you know, you hear me talk about a lot, people make scaling a lot harder than it needs to be. So Amy is going to share her brilliance and her wisdom on how to scale without sacrifice. So let's start there. How does someone scale without sacrifice in their business? Let's just go right into it.
We're just going to go right straight for it. Yes. So, well, I think maybe, creating a little bit of context around what that term means to me is probably helpful, because, I think that when I look at what's possible for business owners and like the founders specifically that I work with, they're purpose driven, they've created a level of success already for themselves, and they're looking around and they're like, wow, there's a lot of potential here. We've got this thing figured out and what we're offering is amazing and we want to help more people with it. And then they're kind of at a loss for how they might do that without having to give something up that they don't want to give up. And often those things relate to things like time freedom. They don't want to have to work harder and harder and harder in order to, create more success. Or it might relate to profitability. They're like, oh my gosh, if we're going to scale this thing, we may lose money trying to do it. Like, how are we going to do that and keep our profit margins? It may also even relate to things like just fun, like having a good time, enjoying what we do. And so, as I think about how I help my clients scale without sacrifice, it really comes down to those types of things. Like, what are the things that you really don't want to give up? And I think being willing to know that it's possible to actually grow, scale, create more leverage and have more opportunity and take advantage of the potential that exists. It's actually possible without having to give up those things. And, my clients are living examples of that. I work, I've built a really amazing 6-figure business. I work 15 hours a week. I don't work hard. Like I don't, do a lot of the things that most traditional business owners do. And I don't feel like I'm ever sacrificing anything because I've built this business by design. And that's really what to me, what it looks like is being able to say, I can have all the things. Like that's actually possible. I can have a business that supports my life instead of a life that supports my business. And so that to me is like what it kind of stands for. But then the how of it all, I mean, if we really want to go there, I think is, to me, it's really about there's several key elements, and I think that we agree on all of them. Like I think your approach is very similar to mine, but I think that the main things that I'm often looking for are how do we make it as simple as possible, right? Like how do we simplify what we're doing? Because I think as business owners, we're constantly making things very, very, very complex because not only are we business owners, but we're also humans. And as humans, we have these lovely minds that want to make things very, 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 very complicated. And the reality is it doesn't have to be that complicated. So finding the simplest path is one of the key things that I'm trying to do with clients to scale without sacrifice. And then I'm always looking for leverage. I know this is something that we've talked about as well. So finding the areas where we can, like the lever that we can pull that's going to create the best source of rocket fuel for a business to get as much bang for their energetic buck as possible. So that could be related to activities or partnerships or anything like that. So finding leverage, and then really again, like making it so that the work is enjoyable. And to me, that looks like aligning activities with the business owner's values and that values of the brand. Because I think it's very easy to get stuck in that, well, everybody's doing this, so I should be doing it too. Or I could do that thing, so I might as well do it. And the reality is that, if it's really in alignment with our values, then we never run into resistance. Like the activities can then be enjoyable and fun and easy. And, oftentimes it's when we're doing things against the grain or the natural order of what makes us us or what makes our brand, that's when we run into those pitfalls and obstacles and like, the activities that really suck to have to do. And then it takes longer and then we're using more capacity than is necessary. And so, yeah, it's really those three things generally are the things: to keep it as simple as possible, to find the leverage, and then to align activities with values. I think those are the main things.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And that's why I love what you do so much. And I'm sure everyone listening is going to so resonate with your approach because A, it works. It's just really effective. But B, you said like the key word that I love so much, which is alignment. It's all about what's right for that person, not what the latest, fad strategy is. And you've got to jump on and do this and make it harder and more complex and all the things.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
about what's right for them.
Yeah, I know. And that's, when I was writing my book, this was the thing I kept thinking about because I spent so many years, I've had my business for 9 years now. And when I first started out, I didn't know what the F I was doing. Like I went and was like, I'll be a coach, and I got a certification. And then I was like, great, now I'm a coach and I have a business. But what? Like, how do I find clients? I don't have any idea how to find clients or to market myself. I didn't know anything about running a business at all. And so I had to figure all that out. And in so doing, it created this like whole existential crisis for me. I don't know if that was what it was like for you, but like for many entrepreneurs that I know and founders who, are the kind of people that you and I tend to work with, I think that is a thing because we tie ourselves in with the business. This is our identity. This is who we are. And like, so we got to figure out the way. And then, I spent all this time trying to fit myself into people's boxes and formulas and blueprints and then I beat myself up when it didn't work or when I hated doing it or whatever. And I've come to learn over the years, probably the hard way, which is also, the best way, I guess, that we have to have that alignment and that being able to figure out what is my way, which I know is part of what you really do with your clients too. Like what is the way that works best, that feels best, and that in itself, I think creates efficiency and is so often overlooked. Like to me, it's such a pragmatic tactic and people don't think about it. Like I think efficiency experts don't even think about it because gosh, if we're like creating all this drag because we just don't like doing something, then let's cut that anchor and do something that's going to actually be enjoyable and effective. And then, and then we get to be more efficient and have more capacity and more bandwidth and we can do more and we can scale more. It's like so simple to me.
Agreed fully. Yes to all of that.
Yes.
I hope you're all taking notes.
Yes.
All right. So, one thing that I do want to dive into with you is what you see people believe they need to do that they don't actually need to do that makes things overly complex. Because I think there is a lot of confusion in the market about what scaling actually means. People confuse growth with scaling a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But B, everybody and their brother now, scaling is the new buzzword. And everybody's saying, I'm going to help you scale, 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 but they're really misusing and misleading people into really complex solutions. So I'm super curious to hear your take on this.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, complexity. This is what I love about you too, is that the site like lean, right? Like there's no such thing as complexity when you're lean, right? And so, oh, it drives me crazy because like I meet these entrepreneurs and these founders who are in that place where they've like picked up all of these tactics, especially as like everything that I'm talking to people about tends to relate to marketing, business development, lead generation, things like that. And so while I'm not the person who's going to say this is your 12 step formula to follow to generate leads, I'm going to be able to look at what they do have going on and say, here's where this isn't working, let's optimize this way, things like that. And that what tends to happen is we like get these 12-step formulas in our business and then we think, well, this is the thing. Like we fall for these traps. And I think that the number one thing that surprises people, and this happens today, it happens every time I mention this, that people are like, wait, what? You don't have to do that thing in order to be successful in business and to scale? And I'm like, no, you don't. But anyway, it happened today on a call to one of the community that we're in, one of the calls that they host for that community. I said this and the thing. So I think that one of those pitfalls is that we think that we absolutely must be on social media and we have to be in all the places. And that if we're not, then we're totally screwed and we can't scale and we can't do the things and we can't have a successful business. And I don't think that's true at all. I just don't, especially if it's not, again, back to alignment and alignment with you, your values, the values of the brand. Like it's one thing, right? If you know that that's where your people are, if you know that that's a strategy that's worked for you in the past, if you enjoy creating content and putting it in the various places, if you're clear on what your vertical is, like if you've got if you've got the exactly which social media platform works for you, like then great, go for it. But if you're somebody who's like me, who's like, I am just kind of like values opposed to social media and what it has created within our society and what it's like, just for me, right? Like that's just me. I don't have any judgment about anybody else using it. I don't tell my clients not to use it. I actually have plenty of clients that do use it and I help them create strategies around it. But for me, it was a big risk 2 years ago. I said, I'm done. I'm not going to be on Facebook anymore. I'm just not going to do it anymore. Because for 7 years, for the entirety of my business up until that point, Facebook was the way organically. Like I never, invested in Facebook ads or paid traffic or anything like that. But like, it was the way that I managed to grow my business. And I was like, I don't agree with this anymore. And I don't want to participate anymore. And so I removed myself. And and my clients are like interested in the potential for that, right? For it to be easier or to be less involved or whatever. So anyway, so I think social media is one of those things that's kind of a myth that people say you must, you have to. And I'm always like, do you really? Do you really? And they're always so surprised when I say that it's possible to grow, to scale, to do all the things without having to be totally embedded, ever present, all over on all the platforms or even on any at all. I think there's so much to be said for being willing to think differently and to think in a non-traditional way that's not based on like, well, everybody's doing it or the market says you have to, or, Forbes said to do it, or, my coach says it's a must, right? When you're willing to challenge that and go, yeah, but what feels right for me? And what's the way that I want to grow my business, So yeah, that's the one that I think people are always like, wait, what? You're giving me permission to not create content all the time? That's like unheard of. They like stop in their tracks and are totally surprised.
I was at a conference in November. It was an exceptionally great conference. And one of the people she's pretty well known in the coaching space, and she had stood up and said, I'm going off social media next year. I'm done. I'm going completely 100% off social media. And there were women that stood up and cried, saying, I never even realized that I could do that. But if you're
Exactly.
going off social media, I'm going off social media.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, I feel like
Like
she
the
started a
humans.
movement in the room, but it is, I mean, I personally love social media. I know
Yeah,
I'm the exception to the rule for most people, but at the end of the day, I'm on social media because I love it. I'm not on social media because I have to be. And that's the difference, I
that
think.
is the difference. Exactly, exactly. I think it's so funny what like one of the things that fascinates me so much about business in general is the human and like the human in the entrepreneur because of the decisions that we make based on things like that. Like, I didn't even know that I could say no to social media. Like, I hate it. It sucks. And I thought that I absolutely had to, like, as if there was like somebody's holding your feet to the fire, right? Like, that is the thing
Mhm.
that we tell ourselves. And so if there's like one thing I think for your audience members to take away here that I would find like most valuable for them is to just be willing to be curious, like question when you say I have to, I should, or even I could. That's one that's been coming up a lot lately for some of my clients as well. I could create a podcast, or I could do a challenge in my Facebook group, or I could do Facebook, like whatever the thing is, like that I could is such a tricky thing too, because then you're saying, well, I've got this bandwidth and capacity, and I don't know that I necessarily want to do this thing, but like I could do it, so I probably should. Then it becomes a should. And so anyway, so I think if you're willing to be curious and to look at those moments when your mind is telling you, I have to, I should, I could, it's a must, it's, you just like, I need a form, whatever, then just pause for a minute and be like, is that really true? Like, do I actually have to? How could this be easier? That's my other favorite question when I'm doing that kind of curious inquiry, is like, how could this be easier? I wonder,
Brilliant. I love it. And you said something really interesting in there too that I find, as you said, if you have the capacity for it. So often what I find people do is they're like, well, I've got to be on social media and everyone's doing this reel thing. I've got to figure out reels. And they just keep adding. It's an and because the guru said that they needed to, or the group that
Mm-hmm.
they're in, that's what everybody else was doing. And they don't take the time to actually look at their capacity. And then they end up in a much more complex business model than they need. They end up overworked. They end up overwhelmed. So let's chat about that a little bit, because I know we're totally in alignment there also.
Oh my God. That's why I love that your brand is lean out, because not only are you saying like lean, right, is like a business practice, right, to have a lean business, but you're saying lean out and look, like take a look at what you've created and look at how complex and look at all the things that you've been adding and how big the stack of mattresses is. You can't feel the pee in the bottom anymore, like the princess, right? Like there's so much that we create that allows for us to just lose sight of what's actually available and what's actually important and what's possible. And so yes, I totally agree. I think we do that all the time, and then we're not, we're not looking at our actual capacity, except to say like, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed, or our team is overwhelmed, or like I don't know, like a lot of my clients will come to me before we work together in a place where they're kind of chasing the chicken and egg scenario, where they're like, we want to generate more revenue. We know we've got this opportunity to grow, but we need to hire in order to generate that revenue. We need this hire in order to do that. But in order to hire, we need the revenue first. So then they're like, what do we do? What do we do? Right. Meanwhile, they're also maxing out their capacity with all of these things that are totally inefficient. And because they're just constantly adding and not pausing to lean out, to look from the 50,000 foot view to say, is all of this necessary? Is it actually effective? Is it aligned with our values? Is this fun? Like, do we really need to be doing these things? Can we dial in some of this stuff instead? Right. Then once you can do that, then it becomes possible to say, we're going to like kick this to the curb. Let's kick this out. We don't have to do this. Let's drop this anchor. Like, oh my gosh, it's so powerful when like my clients are always like, oh my God, I can't believe how much easier my job is now. And my team members are more efficient. Like it's crazy when that happens. And it makes me so happy and so excited, because then it creates so much more potential and possibility, and not only for scaling and like results and impact and whatever, but also for the humans involved in the running of the business to be able to go on a vacation, or take a Friday off, or spend more time with their kids, or not be up at 10:30 writing emails for their next launch. Like there's so much more that's available when you're willing to just pause for a moment, take a bird's eye view and say, oh yeah, that's not necessary, or oh yeah, that's not really working, or oh yeah, look at all the crap we've added on and we don't need it all,
Yes to all of that. I just, yeah, I feel like honestly, we make business so much harder than it needs to be. And it's totally
Totally.
100% our own doing.
Yes. 100%.
100%.
100%. It's this darn human that comes along for the ride, right? Like, oh my gosh, we just are like, we can't not do it. It's like so crazy. And that's, I think, why it's so awesome that people like you exist, that people like me exist, because we can become like, I tell people all the time, I feel like I'm sometimes like the Jiminy Cricket on the shoulder of my clients, because we sit there and we go, I don't know about that. Like, I know exactly where we're going. I see the trajectory. I've plotted the path, and I can see that vision for where you want to go as clearly and maybe even 10 times bigger than you can see it. And I'm going to keep us on that track. And, without that, like our clients, people like our people can see way out there to where it is they want to go. And then they can see 3 feet in front of their faces, and everything else is just the weeds. Like they can't see in between here and there, the pitfalls, the opportunities, the potential, the, like what could go, what we could let go of, all that stuff. It's just impossible to see it when you're in it. And so having an advisor, a coach, a strategist, like somebody like us in your corner who can sit there on your shoulder or sit in the bird's nest at the 50,000 foot view and say, I see the whole field of play. I see all the things you can't see. And I know exactly where we're going, and I'm going to keep us on track, I think is so valuable. It's so unbelievably valuable.
Completely and entirely. And I think it's really interesting. I'm curious your opinion on this, why you think sometimes people don't invest in coaching or consulting or strategy. And from my perspective, I think it's almost, I'm going to say, an ego thing. And I don't mean that as a negative thing, but you're super successful. You've done so much on your own before. It feels like you shouldn't need somebody else's help, or you shouldn't need somebody else to have to weigh in the business. But I have a coach, right? I have a
Right.
strategist, right?
Right.
Because I think we can't see our own stuff. And it's really hard to do that for ourselves, no matter how amazing we are at the things that we actually do and that we actually help our clients with.
Yep.
What's your kind of thoughts and perspective on that?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I totally agree. I think that there's that. I think again, it's the human, right? It's the human in us that says, I should be able to just do this, right? Like I should be able to figure this out, especially if we're people like us who tend to be high achievers, really powerful, like I know I've already done so much, like I should be able to figure this out. And so I think it takes quite a bit of humility to be able to say, well, what else could be possible? Like, what am I not seeing? And I think it's a little bit scary to be that humble, to be able to say, I know that I'm not seeing all of the elements here. And as a leader, I think it's tricky because it requires, again, it requires that humility, and for you to be willing to say, I don't know everything. I don't know all the elements. I don't know all the ways to do this. And I think it takes a very special kind of leader, founder, CEO who is willing to look at that. And then those people, by the way, I think are the ones that become most successful, because they are willing to say, I am not the smartest person in the room, and I know I can't be for this to succeed. Like I just can't be. I have to have the smart people all around me. So I
Yeah,
think that that's part of it. Yeah, for sure.
I agree completely. All right, so
Yeah.
I want to dive into your book because I want to hear
Okay.
more about this. The title, brilliant, hustle free business.
I
Always,
cannot take
yes.
credit for it. My book coach and publisher was the one who came up with it, like on a whim, and I was like, oh, that is it. And then it changed the whole trajectory of my business, because I wasn't even that specific. I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing, was really helping people like take the hustle out of their business. But yeah, it was not my doing, not my doing. What do you want to know about it?
Okay, so before we dive into this, I just want to say I feel like you just illustrated the point of having somebody else helping you in your business because you did what you did incredibly well, and yet it probably took somebody else to be like, oh, you help people have a hustle free
Yeah.
business.
Oh my God. You have no idea. I didn't even know that I should be working with business owners for the first like 11 months of my business. I was trying to be a life coach, and, when I'd go to my mastermind meetings, and my business friends were like, I'm trying to do this thing. I want to like launch a retreat, and I don't know what the steps are. And I was like, okay, let's just sit and talk about it. And we'd take 15 minutes, and I'd help them outline all the steps, and boom, 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 this is what you're going to do. And then you're going to do this and this and this. And they would like sit in awe. And they're like, one day they were like, why aren't you doing strategy for business owners? And I was like, do what now? And they're like, yeah, that's what you should be doing. And I was like, oh, it was like the slot machine, like all the lemons finally lined up, and I was like, ding 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 ding. Now I get it. Now I get it. This is what I should be doing. So yeah, same with the hustle free thing, like that. came because I was interested in writing a book, and my coach said it, and I was like, oh, that's it. And everything has been different because of that.
That's amazing. I love it's so interesting how I just find it so fascinating the way that the little tiny things and the little decisions that have such a huge impact on where we are today.
Oh my
And
gosh.
the conversation that you don't even realize that you're going to have tomorrow that somehow is going to influence what you're doing 5 years from now.
I
It's just such a
know.
fun journey.
I know. Well, and I love it from the other side of that coin too, like being a person who can have that kind, like my clients are all people who have that kind of impact on others in their life. And I just love that they get to go and influence the lives of other people. And even if it's just because they have a big following on social media, and and they say something that inspires somebody to make a change, and they're like, it's so awesome to me to get to work with people who create that for others in their lives too. I just love that.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so
Yeah.
let's go back to your book.
Okay. Okay.
And this is talk about some of the core concepts in the book. So I know you talk a lot about making marketing more manageable, making marketing more fun. So walk us through that and some of the core concepts in the book.
Yeah. So it's funny because the book is like, man, it was before my daughter was born that I wrote it, or no, right after she was born. So it was probably 6 years ago, I guess, when I wrote the book. And if I were to write it again today, because again, right, like then in that moment, I was like, I'm in a program. I need to write a book. This coach said, this is what the title should be based on what I know about you and what you do. And I was like, okay, cool. And so it was like the very beginnings of the foundational work that I do now, which is so much more steeped in like real understanding of how to help people scale and to take the hustle out of what they're doing. So I think that the book itself, if I were going to write it again today, would be somewhat the same and somewhat different. And I almost feel like I should pull a copy of it off the shelf right now because I don't even really remember all of the things that were written in there. Like I knew that I had this deadline I had to meet, and I was like, cool, these are the things that I know that I talk about with clients. And so I think a lot of it is still the same. Like I talked a lot about, again, values alignment, like really figuring out your way, because the resistance is what hangs us up. And I talked a lot about like creating exponential like leverage, but in a different way, like creating exponential results by being willing to, seek community and make friends, like connection, like three. I don't think I talked about this in the book because I don't think I even coined this as my business model until about 4 years ago. But when I was going through my divorce, it was really painful and really awful. And I came to a point where I was like, oh my gosh, my my ex-husband and I are going to be sharing custody of our daughter 50-50. And so I'm only going to have her in my life for 50% of the time. So I really got to figure out how to be able to run this business and make the same amount of money that I'm making on like a fraction of the hours, because I am absolutely not willing to give up any time with her. I'm just not. And so that became my North Star. And so my business model became, let me simplify this down to like, I'm only going to do work with clients one-on-one. I'm not doing anything else. I'm not going to like have shiny objects or programs or other things. I'm just doing that. That's it. And my marketing model became the 3 C's, which are I care, and I'm curious, and I want to connect. And that still to this day is all I do. I just like, I care about people. I want to connect. I want to have conversations. I am so unbelievably epically curious, especially about business and purpose driven businesses, people who are in it for the good, like my clients are, who are making an impact in the world. Like I want to know how they're doing it. And then the strategist in me, this person who has always had this GPS brain that can see in maps, and somebody tells me what they're trying to create, and I see all the ways that it's going to, happen. That has always been a part of who I am. And so then they tell me what they're trying to do, and I'm like, oh my God, I know exactly how we're going to do it. And it's going to be easy and fun, and it's going to be awesome. And the results are going to be, and it's going to change the world. Let's go do it. Like I get so excited about stuff like that. So there's an element of the seeds of that, I think, in the book as well. And I talk about community being so important and things like that. But again, I think if I were going to write the book again, it would be more like more specific, more nuanced. I still think it's a fun read. Like I've got some fun stories in there and things like that. But it's definitely, it was like, again, the seedlings for what has turned into this very specific, more ingrained sort of process that I work with clients through.
I love that so much for the simple fact that like you could do a second edition of like today's hustle free business or the
Right.
modern hustle free business or something.
Totally.
But I love that you didn't wait to write the book. You wrote the book and then you continue to evolve what you do, which is what we all do. When I wrote my planner and I published my whole method in my planner is kind of like a book in a way, not like a real book, but
Yeah.
just I have my process really well defined in it. And I've
Yeah.
evolved that process quite a bit since I wrote it. But if I had waited for it to be perfect, I still wouldn't have put the planner out. Just like if you waited for it to be as, the evolution that you're at today, you never would have put the book out.
I know, and I
So,
wouldn't even be doing this work right now. I'm certain of it. Like it was so
mhm,
necessary for me to write the book then and to know that I didn't have it all figured out, but I knew enough about the value that I add inherently in me being able to just show up as me in my business. And yeah, I agree. I was just talking about this with a client today. We were recording a training for her community, and we were just talking about exactly that. Like, go ahead and do the thing. Start it before you're ready. You got to just go for it, because then it starts to evolve and then it can take shape. But if you're not willing to pull the trigger until you already know the things, then it's never gonna be right. It's just that
mhm.
you need the active involvement of community, of people, of potential clients, of feedback from wherever it's going to come from, in order, which is edgy and scary, but that has to happen in order for us to be willing, in order for us to have the opportunity to evolve it and hone it and get it right. And every time I talk about what I do, I say it a little bit different just to see how it's received. Like, oh, if I say these three things, then this happens. And if I say those two things, then this happens. And then I just keep evolving and keep evolving, even now, 9 years later, I'm constantly evolving.
And 9 years from now, it'll still be evolving
Yes,
because
exactly.
that's the magic of business.
Right, exactly, exactly.
So tell everyone where they can find out more about you, if they want to work with you, if they want to get your book. Tell us, where they can find you and what's coming up next for you.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, easiest way to find me, my website is amybirks.com, A-M-Y-B as in boy, I-R-K-S as in Sam.com. And you can drop me a line there, or you could find me on LinkedIn. That is the one social platform that I'm kind of consistently inconsistently on, sharing some content here and there. And that's, I think my moniker is linkedin.com/strategy ninja. And then, as far as like what I've got going on coming up is, again, I keep my business model very, very simple. So I don't really have, like, I don't run campaigns. I don't have a whole lot of things that are just kind of happening all the time. And that all I really want to be doing is talking to people, because my three C's are, that's like very genuine to who I am. So if anybody is curious about like how they might simplify their business to scale, then I would love to just chat. Like, let's just have a chat. Email me at amy@amybirks.com, and we'll just have a quick convo. That's like the most enjoyable, the satisfying thing for me, is to get to talk to people about their businesses. And like for me, because in those phone calls and within like 30-45 minutes on the phone with somebody, I can immediately see a dozen different ways that things could be easier, more simplified for them, and what else could be possible for them to scale without sacrifice.
Totally. And I love how authentic you are all the way through, and the fact that your business model and everything you do fully supports absolutely everything that you work with your clients on. So
Thank you.
brilliant. And I have one final question for you, which I cannot wait to hear your answer. And that is, how do you work smarter, not harder, and keep things lean in your business?
Well, I mean, I think I've alluded to that through the like all through the call, or the interview here, and I appreciate you saying that I'm authentic, because that's really true. When I did that exercise 4 years ago, really like this kind of come to Jesus moment of, oh my gosh, I gotta have time for my kid. Like that is me. This is my business, and so I think that if there were like a process that I follow, it's really about my priorities. One of my most favorite questions to ask people is, what's most important right now? And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, because, I've got my business, I've got my kid, I'm like getting super fit, like I'm doing all these things, and I'm dating. And some of these dudes want to spend time with me. And I'm like, I don't, like, I wanna, but at the same time, I have a hierarchy of priorities. And so I think this is the thing that I keep thinking about that is most relevant to your question, is that I have a hierarchy of priorities based on what's most important to me. And it starts with time with my kid, because that's so limited. And then it's time for me, like taking care of me, going to the gym, my self-care, all that stuff. And then my business comes next. And then anything else like dating, social, whatever, comes at the bottom of that. And it's not that it's at the bottom, it's all of these things are very important to me. It's just that when I'm filtering decisions, it's through that lens: kid, me, business, whatever else. And so like knowing what's most important and having a hierarchy of priorities like that makes it so much, you don't have decision fatigue because every decision that you make is based on whatever that most important thing is. Should I run Facebook ads? Well, is it going to help us get to XYZ thing that I said was most important or not? Like, or is it not, right? Then don't do the thing. So I think that is my method within my business, is always knowing what's most important, or trying as hard as my human will allow me to, so that then I can make decisions much more easily, swiftly, and with less drag and friction than I think I have in the past.
Absolutely brilliant. I love it. That's such, I mean, that just simplifies everything so much. So again,
This is what we
scale
do.
without
Simplify,
sacrifice,
right?
simplify. This is your special sauce. I love it.
Totally. Totally.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I've absolutely loved this conversation. I feel like we could just talk for days.
I know we could. I'm so happy to have been here, Krista. You're so awesome. And I love talking to you. It's just so much fun.
Same. Everyone, you will find the links down below in the show notes. And Amy, we might just have to have you back on and we could talk about some more things again in the future. But thank you again for being here, everyone. We will see you next week. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. I hope you got a lot of value and actionable insights from today's show and would love if you take a moment to leave us a review. If you have any questions on today's episode or on how to lean out your business, join us over in our private Facebook community, where every week we do live training and Q&A, and I'd love to have you be part of the conversation. Head to leanoutmethod.com/group to join us. And before you go, be sure to subscribe to the show so you're the first to know when we release a new episode. We'll see you next week.